Do you know how to make homemade scalloped potatoes that are easy but also delicious? You're just about to find out. With Easter coming, with spring coming, we might be getting ready to have those special meals, and that's what these scalloped potatoes are all about. Now, I grew up with scalloped potatoes that had maybe cans of sweetened condensed soup in them, maybe even sweetened condensed milk and things. But what's great about these is this is a very pared down, simple, traditional scalloped potato using potatoes. We're going to saute shallots in butter to give them a lot of flavor. We're gonna use some heavy cream, some stock. We're gonna put all this with cheeses together and layer it in a casserole dish to make, honestly, a really simple but super flavorful, easy scalloped potato that anyone can make. So to get started, I have some shallots here. Now, I know, shallots sound kind of like, why are we using shallots? That's something we don't always keep on hand. I always keep shallots on hand for dressings because I just think shallots are delicious. What I like about them for this is they look kind of like a red onion, but they're not. They're a little bit lighter in flavor. I would say even slightly sweeter. And they just really blend well with the flavors we're putting with this. We're gonna put Gruyere cheese, we're gonna put Parmesan cheese, that heavy cream, and we want the onion not to overpower that, but we want it to really soften in the butter and just become sweet, and that's what these do. So I just slice them, keep them in rounds, but just, break them up slightly so when they saute, they really can break down. So I have my bench scraper here. I'm just gonna bring them right over to the butter I have melting in the skillet. This is the best part. So to me, we're adding layers of flavor. This is the only thing we have to cook before we assemble everything. And what this does is, it helps these to really pick up that buttery goodness, obviously. It really helps them to pick up all of those flavors in the butter and really start to break down. So we're gonna add a little bit of salt, because salt, yes, I think you need to season every layer when you're making something, but also salt helps things like shallots let their liquids come out and really break down even quicker. So we're gonna let these soften and really start to brown and become golden in this butter. And while they're doing that, we have other things to get ready. Since the onions are just sauteing, smelling delicious, I like to get everything else ready, so when they're done, we can put everything together. Now, at the end of the onions cooking, I'm gonna take some garlic and add it in. I don't wanna add it in before, because I don't want it to become bitter. To get that peel off, do you see what I did there? All I do is cut the end off and then give it a smash with the back of a knife or even with your hand. And when you do that, this peel, the husk, just comes right off. I think that's so much more simple than getting something else dirty and doing that. I don't like to do that. And what we're gonna do here is just chop up some garlic. You could do a press. I often am asked because I admit, I am someone that will sometimes use a press, sometimes I don't. It honestly depends. When you use a press, it breaks down something even more. So it breaks all these garlic cell walls even more and can make it more strong. For certain applications, I don't mind that. This one, I want it to be just a nice garlic flavor. We're gonna add it at the end so it just becomes warmed through in that butter. When you cook garlic too long, it can become a little bit bitter. So this is what we're doing. We're just getting it ready. And then when it's gonna go in at the end of cooking, for the last minute, I'll just add it to the butter and it will slowly soften. So now that that's ready, we can start thinking about the potatoes. These are just russet potatoes, ones you're gonna find anywhere, ones you probably have on hand. You could slice them by hand, but what I'm gonna do here is, I have them washed, I have them cleaned, have them scrubbed, is I'm gonna use a mandolin. Pretty much just to save myself time and to make sure they're somewhat even. Now on a mandolin, usually you have options on how big the pieces are. I like to go pretty small when we're going scalloped potatoes because you want them, look at that nice, even, small slice. And it can be pretty quick when you're on a mandolin. See how I just go back and forth? And it makes it so much more quick than trying to do this by hand. When you're going with a scalloped potato, you can see how this makes a lot more quick work and it gives us these even slices, which is a traditional scalloped potato. Now, the thing is, I know, sometimes this is where we want to think, well, let's look for a convenience food. Maybe frozen hash browns. I know that's a Midwest staple for scalloped potatoes, and believe me, those are delicious. But when you do it at home like this, look how quickly I'm able to do this while the shallots are cooking, which is the important part. You want to be careful always with your hand when you're using a mandolin, but this is just kind of fun to do. So I'm gonna finish doing this with the potatoes. I'm gonna keep watching my shallots to make sure they're not burning, but just browning nicely. Add the garlic at the end, then we're gonna come together and we're gonna assemble these, and you're gonna think these are the best scalloped potato. The shallots are done. The last minute, I put those garlic pieces in and you can see the garlic just was nicely warmed through. Didn't burn, but it smells really fragrant and really delicious. So I have all my potatoes, as you can see, done. And for the final little thing to get ready here before we assemble is, I have some parm that is already grated kind of finely. I usually do my parm in a big, either a food processor or something, just to kind of get it small pieces, because that takes a long time just to have to do that on your own. Now I have Gruyere. Now Gruyere is super delicious cheese and very traditional in these type of scalloped potatoes because it is nutty, because it has all those extra flavors in it. And you love that good nuttiness when it comes to something like this. And that's why we're using Gruyere. So each cheese does make a difference, and those different flavor nuances are important. That's why Parm too, it has that almost funky flavor, but also kind of a nuttiness to it, which to me is super important when you're going to make this. So all this now really is an assembly process, and that's what's great. We have shredded Gruyere, we have our potatoes, we have our shallots. What we need to do is some type of liquid. So the liquid, honestly, is really easy. What I have is some chicken stock. We're gonna kind of cut it with some chicken stock. You don't want all just full fat cream. You want something that's gonna cut that a little bit. Then I have heavy cream. So the heavy cream is gonna give it that more umptuous, rich flavor, which is super important. So we're gonna add that right in, and you can just see it looks delicious. Add it all right in there. And we're gonna whisk that together. So now to that, I like to add just a few more nuances that really kind of amp it up. Now, you know, I will find a way to use Dijon mustard in every recipe. Believe me, it adds something to it, and it really adds, just like to a dressing where you don't necessarily always know that it's Dijon that's sticking out. What you do have though is this great kind of undertone of flavor that balances things out, and that's just like, I don't know, you just can't, you have the ability to do that, and it just really is amazing. To that, I'm also gonna add a little bit of fresh grated nutmeg. I think it's important to use fresh grated because the big jar of it that we don't use often just sits in our cabinet and kind of goes bad. But this little bit of fresh grated, the reason we do that with cream, it really brings out the flavor. It really brings out the flavor of the mustard. It brings out the flavor of all that. And when you put in some of this fresh nutmeg, it is amazing what it does. I want fresh cracked pepper. That to me, again, with the heavy cream with the richness, these really kind of complement that, but also break through the richness. We're gonna add some salt to that too. Again, if you layer every little bit, at the end you have a well-seasoned dish, and that's what's important. So right here I have my baking dish. It's buttered. You can see I just took some butter from my container. I made sure to butter all the sides, all around. And what we're gonna do is start by taking a good chunk of our potatoes, and don't at first worry about how they look. More what's worried is to get them somewhat evenly spread, but we don't have to shingle them perfectly at this point. This is more about making sure that we get them in even layers, but not that we get a beautiful look going, because no one's gonna see underneath. When you go in and kind of get up a big spoonful of these, you're not gonna see how they looked underneath. So that's why when you see these scalloped potatoes, and at the end they look beautiful, and you think, oh, I don't wanna take the time to do that. It doesn't take so much time as you think. That's the secret of a good scalloped potato. So now that I have about, probably roughly a third of those in there, I wanna mix together my Parm cheese, Parmesan, and my Gruyere. We're gonna mix those together because I wanna use both of those. We're gonna just mix them roughly, nothing special here, and we're gonna put on a good third of them. And what this is doing is every layer we're making sure to get the flavor where it needs to be. Then we're gonna put on roughly a third of our shallot and garlic. Actually, I'm probably gonna do half of this one because I don't like to end with this on top. I just like to end with cheese on top. So we're gonna do, and sprinkle those around. Again, you're getting that butter flavor in there. You're getting all that beautiful garlic in there, the shallot. So now what I'm gonna do is just keep repeating layers. And at the end, we're gonna do a nice layer on top so it looks good, and then we'll pour on the liquid. So on the top layer, you can see what I'm doing. I somewhat shingled them nicer. It's just for looks. But the thing is, when you're having a special occasion like this honestly takes a couple minutes. So it looks like annoying, but it really isn't. And it makes it just finish off a little bit better. So in between each layer, I have the 2 layers in there already of cheese with shallots and garlic. I use up the shallots and garlic underneath because the top just doesn't look good. I also, as I was going with the potatoes, like to sprinkle some salt. Potatoes need a lot of seasoning. There's a lot of potatoes in here and they need that seasoning. And I like to add that cracked pepper on top too. In those layers of potatoes, it's just good to get that seasoning right where it needs to go. Now before I put all that cheese on top that's left, that last third, I'm gonna add my cream and stock mixture with the Dijon, the nutmeg. We're gonna just throw it all on here and let it slowly seep in over all of them. So this is gonna go down in them. You would think you need a thickener. You would think you need this with some flour, but the surprising thing is, as it bakes, you really don't. It works in with the potatoes become creamy, it all just works together, and it becomes this obviously umptious, obviously kind of a special occasion dish, but that's kind of the beautiful part of it, is it's delicious. So at this point, once we put now the rest of the cheese on, because you want to finish off with the cheese on top, and you want that to get nice and brown as it's cooking. But you could put this in the fridge for a while. I would even say probably up to 24 hours. You could cover it, and you could put it in the fridge and be ready to go. But you could also cook it right away. So it's up to you, and that's the best part about meat dishes like this, is do what works for you. And you can see, yes, there's a lot of cheese on it. This is a special occasion. This is what we do once in a while. We're gonna enjoy it. We live once. So I'm gonna pop this in the oven. We're gonna let it bake. We're gonna turn it up at the end just to make sure it gets golden on top. And then we are gonna try it, because that's the best part. So I'll see you in a little bit when we try that. I took this out a few minutes ago so it could cool down a little bit. You definitely want to let it cool 10 to 15 minutes, if not slightly more, because it is bubbling and hot when you take it out. But see how I like to leave it in until it really gets brown and golden around the edges. Now, guys, part of food is to wake it up, but also sometimes when you have a rich dish like this, it's nice to have something green on top just to cut through some of that. And that to me is what parsley does sometimes. So I'll put a little bit of parsley on, but this is what's great. It can serve a crowd, obviously. Leftovers, no one's gonna complain about. Look at all that though. Do you see how it's like it self-thickens? You can see that little bit of sauce that's starting to pool down there. It's thick, and that's exactly what you want. You want it to get thick, and that's what happens. So these are real scalloped potatoes. No canned items or anything in there. I just love that. I love when we can make something and it's even better. It's good. What I love is it's a very clean flavor, even though it's rich. You really get the potato, you get the cheese, which you need, that Gruyere, and that Parm you really need. And then with the cream, the little bit of Dijon in there, which you don't notice, but you just get this full, rounded flavor, and it's really good. What I like is nothing fights with anything else. It's just all delicious. So what do I hope you do with this? Like I always say, I hope you make it, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you share this video around, because when you share these videos, it helps other people find me, sure, but it also helps them see if this guy can do it, anyone out there can do it. This is really simple to make. So check my website, wiseguy.com, for this scalloped potato recipe and all my other recipes. Your Easter will be the best one yet. Believe me, try it out. You're gonna love it. I can't wait to find out.